There is a hard, painful lesson that every writer needs to learn at some point before they can make anything of value. Being good at writing isn't the ability to find the right words, order of events, and pacing to properly put the ideas that are in your head onto paper. Being good at writing is the ability to tell which 90% of your ideas don't belong on paper in the first place. When I was first thinking about getting into writing, I had these grand tales in my head, and I was convinced that I'd come up with what could be the next big thing. I've since learned otherwise, but what would happen if I didn't, and then was put in charge of a large-scale animation production? Darling in the Franks is what would happen. Now, I am probably going to get very rude during this video, but please understand that I am projecting like crazy. All of the things that went wrong in this show bear a striking resemblance to the kinds of mistakes I saw myself making in my early attempts at writing, so don't expect me to pull any punches. This is personal. Long-form episodic storytelling can be thought of as picking fruits from a tree. At the start, you pick all of the high-quality, low-hanging fruit, but eventually you'll start to run low, so you either have to pick lower-quality fruits or climb higher onto the tree. And you can't climb higher unless you had the forethought to bring a ladder. Yes, your early episodes need to be entertaining, but they also need something to set up for what comes later, and that something is called substance. The early episodes of Darling in the Franxx were beautiful and entertaining and captured your attention, but they had no substance. Twice in the first episode, they talk about the bird that shares wings, a bird which can't fly unless there are two of them because each one only has one wing, like... Yes, Nishigori, that is indeed the textbook definition of symbolism, but why? What does this add that just telling us the moral of the story doesn't? Why couldn't this be added in more subtly? Why do you need multiple lines of dialogue to present us with something so obvious? Yes, the whole bird whoosh whoosh shot was very pretty, but what complexity or depth of character or anything did this actually add? Space which should be spent on something with actual substance is instead being spent on telling us what the moral of the story is before anything actually happens. It's because of little things like this adding up that your show gets to the point where the climax of the lesbian... Do you remember the lesbian? The climax of the lesbian's character arc is her pinning someone to the bed and then explaining what her character arc is. You start episode 22 with the phrase, "No one can swim in the same river water twice," which is a metaphor for what the moral of the episode is about. And then they repeat it multiple times in what is clearly supposed to be poetic and book-endy, and it's obvious they think they're being smart. But how is this smarter than just having a moral to the story? The reason things like this are done through subtlety and symbolism, besides the fact that subtlety makes it less distracting and insulting to our intelligence, is because you don't need to bore us by filling a bunch of your script with a narrator prattling on to us like an old man. Darling in the Franxx, from the first shot all the way to the end, is filled with this tone that tells you that the show thinks it's smart. It uses dream sequences and shoves symbolism in your face and spends a lot of time with its characters just pondering philosophy. This can work for a show. What will eventually become the last season of Attack on Titan spends a lot of time with its themes, and it's all the better for it. But no matter how many poetic ironies, dream sequences, and clever connections you write, you can't make your show smart if you never had anything smart to say in the first place. And if you don't, all that pretentious stuff is just wasting my time. Gurren Lagann had its protagonists succeed because they followed the themes of the show, and that gave them superpowers, which worked because it was Gurren Lagann and it was trying to be fun and moving instead of hyper-intellectual. But when you're trying to convince us that love conquers all to the point where you'd romanticize codependence and you want that message to be taken seriously as something intellectual, then you're going to need a better explanation than love makes the strongest robot of them all work and it beats up the bad guys. This is a show where everything is symbolic of sex and they barely talk about sex. And when they're talking about relationships between horny teenagers, they barely bring up the horniness. Now, I'm not saying that the show is bad because no one unlocked a new mech transformation by initiating coitus while piloting, but it would at least be interesting and make good use of the show's visual themes, which the rest of the show can't claim. You have this whole thing where these two characters fall in love and then make a baby when society is telling them not to, and at no point do we see them struggling with their sexuality and what it means. Whenever we have fan service shots, it's rarely, if ever, from another character's point of view, which would actually further the themes of the show. And in general, you are writing a story about teen sexuality in which your setting is a giant excuse for 10 teenagers to get into relationship drama and discover themselves, and you almost never dive into their sexuality. The scene where they make the baby isn't even there, it just cuts to them in bed after the fact. And there's barely any other real sexual intimacy in the story because God forbid we explore aspects of the human experience by writing humans experiencing them. Nah, it's not like art is about making people feel something. I'm just concerned about whether everyone is picking up on my really insightful thoughts on how hot sociopaths are. I know that not all channels let you get away with Scum's Wish level smut, but they didn't even try. Your story is substanceless. I don't care how smart you think it is. If you don't want to take the time to actually explore ideas, then just make a Twitter post. Now this kind of ties into the first point since it's a reason that things get really bad by the end, but while the first point was about the first episodes being entertaining while lacking substance, this is just basic incompetence. Here, we have two characters in a team. We're going to take a bunch of time to characterize them and their dynamic, and we're going to kind of maybe hint at them becoming a couple, and then we're not going to give them an overarching plot. At all. Not one. Here, we have this whole episode dedicated to the budding love story between a girl who's getting over the main character and her simp. But then the relationship doesn't develop further, and at one point she goes back to liking the main character, completely regressing all progression we got prior to this. Eric, don't you realize it doesn't matter if it's unentertaining, unsatisfying, and meandering, it's saying something deep. Yeah, not as deep as I'm about to shove my foot up your ass! You've got episode 10, where Zerome wanders into the house of an adult. That's Act 1. Act 2 is an exposition dump. And then there's no Act 3 because the rest of the episode is just an exposition dump with no meaningful climax. Episode 16 has no plot that goes from the start to the end of the episode. It's just a series of scenes which all follow up on individual arcs that have been set up till then by previous episodes. There is no meaningful thread connecting these events, and there's no meaningful tension in the episode. And it doesn't have the excuse of saying it's a slice of life episode, because good slice of life shows aren't just normal stories with all of the plot and tension removed, they actually replace it with something. Then you have stuff like the end of episode 21. This is one of the biggest emotional climaxes of the story. Here's the dialogue. 02. I kept my promise. I believed you would. Everyone helped. Right, I missed you, 02. Same here, darling. Poetry! I go onto the Animeme subreddit out of curiosity in 2020 year of our lord, and I see people still going on about their perfect dino waifu. This show largely got popular on 02's appeal, and that is something I have a real problem with. The early story of Darling in the Franxx is about a predator seducing a depressed and lonely teenage boy into a relationship with the intention of one day throwing him away for her own benefit, knowingly harming him with no remorse, and doing what she can to make him a codependent individual whose sole reason for living is her so that she can more efficiently take advantage of him. For Christ's sake, she even makes blue marks appear on his body that he hides from his friends who are worried about this relationship hurting him. And all of this is romanticized, and the fans eat it up. Are you people okay? Did someone hurt you? Is someone currently hurting you? And the worst part is her redemption arc. Now, I don't have any issue with the fact that this character got redeemed. Maybe this is just me, but there isn't much a character can do that'll keep me from entertaining the idea of them becoming a better person. But the way it happens is so weird. The whole thing seems to be giving this message that if you fall in love with a terrible person who mistreats you, you can fix them by loyally standing by their side and not having your love falter at all. And then there is one point where she does something so fucked up that he flips on her. And by flipping on her, I mean saying, "You are a monster." Something she's been told all her life, but she thought he'd never say it, which is very poetic and clever, and definitely better writing than portraying him having a genuine emotional breakdown in response to seeing the woman he loves brutalizing all of his friends nearly to death, but I'm getting off topic. In this moment, she's figured out already that Hiro is this boy from her past that she fell in love with way back when, and she's been, killing all of these people she pilots with and sucking out their life force in hopes of one day eventually meeting him again. And so, him rejecting her due to the way that she's been acting devastates her. So what does she do? Does she realize that since any of the people she'd been hurting till then could have been her darling without her realizing it, and hurting her darling is something that would devastate her, that maybe what she was doing was wrong, and because of that she forms empathy for other people? Does she get so distraught at the idea of being hated by the one person that she cares about that she embraces the idea that she needs to grow and works to become a better person so that she can face him with pride sometime later and undo her disgrace? Ha! Nope! All of that would make her an actually interesting and engaging female lead. She instead goes right back to killing countless men whom she pilots with, still having no respect for human life, until Hiro goes to her in the middle of battle and apologizes for calling her a monster, which leads to her apologizing too when they make up, and then she's like, the only word I can come up with for it is tamed. She suddenly gets weirdly obedient to everyone, loses her rebellious streak, and just starts acting with a lot of empathy towards people out of nowhere. This didn't happen because of her character and the conclusion of a well thought out character arc for her. This is Hiro's reward. She's been wifeified, and congratulations, you somehow made a story that glorifies a woman who should be condemned and managed to make it chauvinist. I'm not saying that I'm offended on behalf of women or anything, I'm honestly just kind of impressed.